Alright, welcome back everyone to Chapter 2 of The World of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Journey to the North, Logs and Files of a Hidden One. So, Chapter 2 is Viking Lore. Norse mythology is some of the richest, most imaginative I've ever encountered in a single culture. The lore so closely reflects the Viking ethos, the adventurous spirit, the lust for life, and the unique blend of warm communal intimacy with cold functional brutality. Here's an overview of lore elements that, in my estimation, best reflect the way Vikings see themselves and the world. My advice: don't try to make sense of events or chronology. After all, it's myth. Trust me, it's better to just go with the narrative flow. Another caveat: myths and legends in any culture tend to have multiple versions. The ones presented here predominate in the 870s CE Viking communities I've explored in Norway and England. Fate and the Norns. Norse lore depicts existence as a sort of cosmic tapestry. Everything in the universe, every being, has its own thread of fate, a life path immutable. These threads are woven together by three ethereal goddesses known as the Norns, the keepers of fate. Thus, everything's destiny is intertwined, knitted together into a great existential fabric. Little is written or spoken about the Norns. I'm not certain, but Vikings may consider it bad luck to discuss them. As a result, the goddess weavers remain shrouded in mystery. Known as Urd, or the past, Verdandi, or the present, and Skuld, or the future, they live in a shadowy den called the Well of Urder, Fate, tucked beneath one of Yggdrasil's great roots. The origin myth, Ymir. In the beginning, there was only the great void, Ginnungagap. After endless eons, a chaos of primordial forces began to swirl in the abyss. A searing hurricane of fire, known as Muspelheim, swirled out to one side, while the frigid ice of Niflheim churned to the other. Between them hovered silent cosmic darkness, until the moment they finally surged together, frost meeting fire in a storm of scalding mist. From this mist, the great giant Ymir was born, the first being, father of the Jotnar, the race of giants born from the sweat of his axillae. Well, indeed, everything in existence was born of Ymir's flesh, eventually. Surtr, the second being. Some legends say the second entity born from Ginnungagap, right after Ymir, was the ancient, monstrous entity known as Surtr, father of the fire giants. Emerging into the firestorm of Muspelheim with a great flaming sword, Surtr brought heat and light to the young cosmos by wielding his blade to conjure the sun. I told you Viking myth was imaginative. It is said that Surtr and his race are destined to be dire agents of Ragnarok, the apocalyptic final battle that topples the gods. Unfortunately, the cataclysm will leave our current cosmos a barren wasteland of ash and ruin, but another will rise in its stead, the grand cycle of death and rebirth, the world born anew. Birth of the Aesir. According to the lore, a great cow called Aduhuma appeared in the churning ice of Niflheim. As this creature licked the salt of the frozen realm, Ymir fed from her udders. This began to melt pockets of Niflheim's frozen wasteland, and a being called Buri emerged from the ice, the first Aesir god. Buri begat Bor, who married the Jotnar queen Besla, and had three sons, Vili, Ve, and Odin. Formation of the realms, Yggdrasil. The three brothers were raised in the barren wastes of Niflheim, with no food other than Aduhuma's milk to nourish them. Led by Odin, they grew into thugs who rebelled against their progenitors. They impaled Ymir in his sleep and began tearing his corpse to pieces. But the foul murder unleashed such a vast rolling torrent of Ymir's blood that much of the world was swept away. The deluge flowed into a great tree of life, Yggdrasil. Other realms swirled into existence and settled along the tree's roots and branches. Ironically, Ymir's mutilation became the essential substance of the new cosmos. His fluids became the ocean, his skin and muscles the soil, his bones the mountains, his teeth the cliffs, his hair the vegetation, his brains the clouds. Above it all, Ymir's skull became the sky, or dome of heaven, held aloft by four primordial dwarves, Nordri, Sudri, Austri, and Vestri, who stand as the 4 points of the compass. So there you have it, the physical world as we know it. Design of mankind. The next step, of course, was the creation of humans. Aesir gods formed the first two people, Ask and Embla, from two trees. Certainly an interesting choice. Perhaps an echo of Yggdrasil and our common roots. The Norse like to say humans were created by Aesir vanity. The gods wanted inferior beings to boss around who would worship them, but the Aesir creators were kind enough to erect a great wall around Midgard, realm of the humans, to keep out giants and other hostile races. This wall was built from Ymir's eyebrows, which I find quite amusing. And against all odds, humanity thrived. The 9 realms. Again, Norse mythology hoists the world tree, Yggdrasil, as the spine of the entire cosmos, with all 9 realms of existence arrayed across its roots and branches. Some even say the ancient tree is older than creation itself, but don't try to ponder the logic of that. Viking skalds portray Yggdrasil as an inconceivably immense oak or ash, beautiful and symmetrical, that is, with upward branches the same length as downward roots, all curving to form a near-perfect spherical shape. The Raven-clan seer Valka tells me this circular quality symbolizes order and eternity. As mentioned earlier, the 2 oldest realms are the icy netherworld of Niflheim and the land of primordial fire Muspelheim. Asgard, home of the Aesir gods, is nestled in Yggdrasil's highest branches, in the middle branches of Midgard, where mortal humans live. Vanheim, kingdom of the Vanir gods, Alfheim, home to the Light Elves, Svartalheim, home of the dwarves, and Jotunheim, home of the Jotun folk, the giants. The lowest realm, tucked into Yggdrasil's roots near Niflheim, is Helheim, the realm of the dead. Vikings' afterlife, the lands of the dead. Before we explore the 9 cosmic realms of Norse mythology, I want to quickly review how Norse folk view the notion of life after death. The basic belief is that the deceased are assigned specific destinations depending on how they've lived their life on balance, where the honored dead go. Vikings who live an honorable life are sent to dwell in one of 2 different places within the walls of Asgard. Those who die bravely on the field of battle are sent to Valhalla, the great hall of the slain, a glorious paradise where happy warriors feast and fight forever under the grateful and single eye of Odin himself. The second destination for good folk is Folksvanger, the people field. The rules and parameters for this place are somewhat nebulous. Some lore indicates that the goddess Freya makes the selections, welcoming both men and women, often reuniting spouses or families separated by death. And right here's an artistic depiction of the remains of a great Jotun, entwined for eternity in the gnarled roots of a colossal ironwood tree. Less glorious destinations. Whereas Viking warriors who die bravely in battle can look forward to feasting in the Hall of Valhalla, those who die of illness or old age are sent to cold, dreary Helheim. Worse, criminals and other disreputable types are punished by banishment to the frigid mist of Niflheim, a cruel and unforgiving realm. Asgard, realm of the Aesir gods. This towering treetop realm is the homeland of Norse's lore's foremost tribe of gods, the Aesir. Said to be a fertile, verdant land riven with cerulean waterways, Asgard is ruled by Odin and his queens, Frigg and Freya, a Vanir goddess. From their royal palace of Valkishaf, skaldic poets describe a resplendent kingdom, quite like classic Islamic depictions of Jannah, final abode of the righteous, a verdescent garden of bliss, surrounded by bright flower-dappled meadows and rolling hills. According to Viking legend, every important Aesir god dwells in their own Asgardian citadel. Valhalla. Asgard houses the legendary Hall of the Slain, known as Valhalla. Here are gathered all Viking warriors, who have fallen bravely in battle, called the Einhar. These slain heroes spend their afterlife feasting and fighting joyously. It is said that such activities will continue with vigor until the dark day of Ragnarok, when all Einhar will be called to join the gods in fending off doom, unsuccessfully, if the Norns' threads of fate are to be believed. The Rainbow Bridge. In Norse lore, the only way to reach Asgard from Midgard is to cross the translucent span of the strange, mythical Bifrost. This iridescent rainbow bridge shimmers with the spectral rapiers, as its name suggests. A powerful god named Heimdall guards the bridge, denying access to all but Odin's chosen visitors. The Bifrost is indestructible, although legend says it will be shattered on Ragnarok, the end of days. Odin, All-Father, an eye for truth. Much lore exists about Odin, chief of the Aesir gods. Typically portrayed as brilliant and cunning, he is said to be driven by a voracious appetite for secret truths and hidden prophecy, in particular for unraveling the threads of his fate at Ragnarok. Perched on Higelschaft, his magical throne, Odin scans the realms with a supernatural gaze, obsessively seeking arcane sources of wisdom. Some say his mother, All-Father, some say his moniker, All-Father, comes from this image of the all-knowing Watcher. Others say Odin gave this name to himself after he murdered Ymir, proudly claiming to be the source of all creation, even though all creation is formed of Ymir's flesh and blood. Seeking to quench his thirst for knowledge, Odin will go anywhere and do or give anything for a glimpse of the future. Tales of his travels through the 9 realms depict the All-Father riding his 8-legged horse Sleipnir with his raven companions Hugin and Munin. Once, Odin went so far as to sacrifice one of his own eyes at the mystical well of Mimir, nestled in the roots of Yggdrasil, the World Tree. What did Odin get in exchange? The lore is not entirely clear. Certainly, he sought to know what his future held, but the Norns, the keepers of fate, are loath to share such knowledge. In any case, Odin ended up with a nasty scar across his socket where his eye used to be. Frigg. Right here. Odin's wife seems to play a lesser role in Norse lore than his decidedly more glamorous consort, the Vanir princess Freya. Some scholars suggest they're actually one and the same, but the Vikings in Ravensthorpe don't see it that way. Goddess of motherhood and love, Frigg bore Odin numerous offspring, including the sons Thor, Balder, Hoder, and Hermod. Despite Freya's arrival in Asgard and her political importance, Frigg continues to be seen as the true queen mother of the Aesir gods. Thor, god of thunder. Viking lore depicts Thor with great veneration. He's easily the most popular deity in the Norse pantheon. In terms of sheer power and brute strength, the Aesir god of thunder is the mightiest warrior in Asgard, wielding Mjolnir, his brutal hammer. He can crush any foe's head in a single swing. One ground strike can unleash a temblor. But Thor's thunder deals out life as well as death. Crossing the sky in a flying chariot pulled by winged goats, he calls down rainstorms to fill the wells, water the fields, and boost the harvest. Best of all, Thor is seen in Norse culture as the embodiment of courage and a protector of all Viking people. Everyone in the settlement, regardless of wealth or family, or list of glorious exploits. Many villagers wear Mjolnir-shaped talismans for good luck, in homage to Thor. The Viking skalds recite verses full of kennings and heti, Norse poetic devices said to be favorites of the thunder god. His only flaw appears to be a reprimandal nature that sometimes triggers blunt reactions. The tale of Mimir's well. Ages ago, the Aesir and Vanir gods clashed in a war so titanic it was said to rattle the very roots of Yggdrasil, the great world tree. Massed armies of gods collided thunderously on the battlefield, and the toll was so terrible that the two sides finally negotiated a truce. Hostages were exchanged to ensure compliance. Thus, Odin sent his trusted counselor, Mimir, to Vanheim as the Aesir sign of good faith. In return, the Vanir leader Njordr sent his daughter Freya to become Odin's new queen. In Norse lore, Mimir was considered the wiser of Odin's advisors. The exchange seemed like a smart deal at first, sure to guarantee the peace. Unfortunately for Mimir, his reputation as a cunning operative was such that the Vanir suspected him of being more of a spy than a hostage. When Yor noticed Mimir listening as a Vanir tribal council, he impetuously lopped off the advisor's head and sent it back to Asgard, embalmed in herbs. Now, Odin had been learning Seir magic from his new queen, and he found a spell to keep Mimir's head alive. The Allfather placed the head by a mystical well at the very bottom of Yggdrasil's roots. Its water is said to be magical, bestowing great wisdom on anyone who drinks it, but only in exchange for a terrible price. Indeed, legends say Odin himself paid this price, offering his own left eye as a sacrifice to the well. Mimir's assigned task is to make sure no one drinks without paying a dear price. This secret place is known as the Well of Mimir, or Missenbrunner. Heimdall, the Bridge Sentry. Descriptions of Heimdall, the sentinel guarding the aforementioned Rainbow Bridge, portray quite a striking figure. He shines like an oil torch from head to toe, gleaming like the sun. Even his teeth are solid gold. His vigilance is unmatched. He can see for miles and hear every sound, making him the ultimate watchman of Asgard. All day and all night, Heimdall scans beyond the horizon for threats. One day, in the future, according to legend, Heimdall's sentry watch will end when he spots Surtur leading a swarm of fire giants and countless hordes of Hell's Denzians across the Rainbow Bridge. As the invaders storm Asgard, Heimdall will raise Gjallarhorn, the great trumpet, whose blast can be heard in all realms. His warning will summon gods, men, dwarves, and elves to stave off the doom of Ragnarok. Tyr, god of war and justice. Odin appointed this esteemed advisor long ago. Technically serving as the Aesir tribe's war god, Tyr is better known in Norse lore as an arbiter of justice and cosmic order and a skilled diplomatic emissary. Indeed, this so-called war god was a primary architect of the clever truce and hostage exchange that ended the brutal Aesir-Vanir conflict. Perhaps the best-known Tyr tale depicts his selfless sacrifice so Odin could imprison the great wolf Fenrir. The Allfather tried to trick the lupine beast into a test of strength. The gods would bind Fenrir with a golden rope and watch him escape with ease, or so he said. But Fenrir was suspicious, and rightfully so. In truth, the rope was unbreakable, woven by the great dwarf craftsman Ivaldi. Fenrir would not submit to the binding unless a god first placed a hand in the wolf's mouth. Knowing his forearm would be lost, Tyr volunteered. Odin bound the monster, and Fenrir bit down hard. Loki the Trickster. And as we all know, Loki is Basim is Loki reincarnated. And we're going to see that in Assassin's Creed Mirage when that comes out a few months from now. Loki is a complicated figure in Norse mythology. Although one or perhaps both of his parents were giants, Loki was raised in Asgard and is considered a member of the Aesir tribe. However, his oft-troubling exploits violate every traditional Viking value. He's portrayed as a wily, unpredictable shapeshifter with potent magical powers and a penchant for trickery and betrayal. Things like truth, honor, and loyalty clearly mean very little to him. Several Viking lore keepers I've consulted hold conflicting views on whether Loki is a giant, a god, or something else entirely. Loki's influence in mythological events is certainly far-reaching. One of Loki's most infamous betrayals resulted in the loss of the beloved Aesir god Baldur, son of Odin and Frigg. See the following entry for more. He also sired some of the most consequential monstrosities in Norse lore. The great wolf Fenrir, destined for mortal combat with Odin at Ragnarok. The world serpent Jormungandr, fated to a similar struggle with Thor on that same apocalyptic day. And Hel, the terrifying queen of Helheim, ruler of the teeming hordes of the dead who populate her cold underworld realm. The death of Baldur. Baldur is one of the most beloved gods in the Norse pantheon, and this tale is one of the best-known myths in Norse society. When Baldur was born, his mother Frigg, a noted seeress, had a dream that foretold his violent death. Shaken by this prophecy, she canvassed all of creation in a motherly frenzy. Every creature and plant, fire and water, metal and stone, extracting Oz's protection for her newborn son. Incredibly, she succeeded. Every single entity in the cosmos, living or inert, swore to leave her son unscathed. Well, except for one thing, mistletoe. But Frigg felt no threat from such a soft, gentle, innocent plant. Balder grew up to be quite a shining star. Indeed, some translate his name as Shiny One. Portrayed as a charming, generous, and just spirit, the son of Odin and Frigg was particularly adept at settling disputes and quickly became a favorite among all his fellow Aesir. And nothing could hurt him. Weapons bounced harmlessly off his skin, leaving him unscathed. All this irritated Loki, who began to scheme ways to undermine Balder's popularity. The sly shapeshifter took the form of an old woman, befriended Frigg, and learned about Mistletoe's omission from her protection list. Then he gleefully fashioned a sharp spear, tipped with a humble sprig of that plant. Balder's blind brother Hoder took the spear and hurled it as Loki directed, targeting a rabbit he thought, but instead he pierced Balder's chest, killing him. Balder's spirit was swiftly escorted down to Helheim, where he sits, pale and forlorn, at Hel's table in her palace hall. The final betrayal. The story of Balder ends with one more stunning example of Loki's treachery. Shattered by grief, Frigg asked her son Hermod to mount his father's magical steed Sleipnir and ride to Helheim itself to bring Balder back. After 9 exhausting days and nights traveling down Yggdrasil's routes, Hermod reached Hel's halls and made a convincing case for his brother's release. Helheim's queen agreed, but on one condition. If Balder is so universally beloved, let me first see all things weep for him. Hermod returned with the news, and the Aesir immediately sent envoys to everything in creation, living and inanimate, and every entity, including Mistletoe, wept for Balder, all except one creature. A haggard old cave-dwelling giantess named Thok refused to shed even one tear. As a result, Hel's condition was not met, and she refused to release Balder's spirit back into the living world from her joyless realm. Thok, as you might have suspected, was the shapeshifter Loki in disguise. It didn't take the Aesir gods long to unveil Loki's deadly mischief. They bound the trickster to a rock, using the entrails of his son Nari, a nasty touch, and set a poisonous snake above him, venom dripping from its fangs. Loki remains there to this day. Every drip that strikes him triggers paroxysms of burning pain. Indeed, his agony is so great that it shakes the very earth with terrible spasms. From this comes the Viking origin story of earthquakes. Fortunately for Loki and our world, his loyal wife Sigyn remains at his side, catching the dripping venom in a bowl. But whenever she's forced to go and empty the vessel, Loki catches a few excruciating drips in the face. Alfheim, realm of the elves. This homeland of the light elves, draped in mystery, is said to be tucked into the upper branches of Yggdrasil, along with the 2 godly realms, Asgard and Vanheim. Light elves are typically portrayed as radiant, demigod-like beings, luminous and fair as the sun to behold, with mystical qualities and powers. A couple of Viking seers I've consulted tell me their visions reveal Alfheim as a verdant, bright, and peaceful world. But very little elven activity is described in the rare scholarly surveys of Norse mythology I've found, nor is there much oral tradition passed down, not even a basic description of the realm itself. A few old tales suggest that the Vanir god Freyr, brother of Freya and son of Nidhor, is a great friend of the Light Elves. In fact, some lore suggests Freyr built his palace in Alfheim with elven help, and he may even be their ruler. Vanaheim, realm of the Vanir gods. This homeland of the Vanir tribe of gods, much like Alfheim, is enshrouded in mystery. I've heard Viking storytellers call it a realm of harmony, and describe an almost primal wilderness. In Old Norse sagas, the Vanir gods share a close bond with both the natural and spirit worlds, befriending wild creatures and wielding magic to grow gardens and shape forests. Vanir seers also practice the dark art of Seor to conjure visionary trances for purposes of prophecy and divination. The Long War. As mentioned earlier, Norse lore speaks of a lengthy, bloody conflict between Asgard and Vanheim. It dragged on for so many years, it was called the Long War. Odin's Aesir army, wielding conventional physical weapons, blade and arrow and hammer, would march on Vanaheim and launch fierce frontal assaults, raging across the battlefield in a very Viking-like frenzy of bloodlust. but the Vanir, masters of dark magics, would counter with terrible spells and incantations. Towering tidal waves would sweep Aesir's soldiers to their doom. The sides were so evenly matched that neither could gain the upper hand. War weariness finally ended the hostilities with a political exchange of hostages to guarantee the truce. As part of this exchange, the Vanir princess Freya went to Asgard to become Odin's new consort. In return, Odin's closest advisor, Mimir, was sent to Vanaheim to serve in Niordhor's court. The tale illustrates what the squabbling gods have slowly come to realize, that Aesir and Vanir must together brace against the coming firestorm of Ragnarok. Njordr. Leader of the Vanir tribe, Njordr also looked after the sea, the wind, and fishermen. His role in Norse lore is slim in the sagas I've seen and heard. Few tales are told of his exploits. In fact, he is probably best known as the father of the twins, Freya and Freyr, two Vanir gods who played much larger parts in the mythology. Freya. Freya cuts quite a figure in Norse lore. Known as a striking beauty, she's the goddess of fertility and the caretaker of childbirth. Yet she's also the most feared Vanir warrior on the battlefield, conjuring fierce and powerful spells that can lay waste to entire legions of foes. Master of many forms of magic, Freya is particularly gifted at Seor, the dark ancient art of divination. The Seor trance is said to lift one above the flow of time, spying ahead to where fate's threads go. All legends agree that Freya taught Seor and other magics to Odin, giving him some unsettling glimpses of the future. Side note. Legend also has it that Freya was quite a cat lover. It is said that her palace chambers in Asgard were crawling with feline residents. Even Freya's chariot was pulled not by horses, but colossal gray and blue forest cats, gifts from Odin's son Thor. She also considered pigs and boars to be sacred creatures. Freyr. Twin brother of Freya, this god is typically seen as the spirit of fall's harvest. Some skaldic tales suggest that Freyr's rough treatment at the hands of the Aesir during a diplomatic mission to Asgard may have triggered the long war between the tribes. Norse lore also indicates that Freyr reigns over the elves in Alfheim and seems destined for a momentous clash with the fire giant Surtur at the dawn of Ragnarok. We have Jotunheim, realm of the frost giants. Jotunheim is the land of the Jotnar, the great frost giants of Nordic myth. In Viking lore, the Jotnar dwell in a snowbound mountainous wilderness full of dark boreal forests and frozen lakes. Interesting that Jotunheim is a lot like Norway in winter. The realm's capital is Ugnor, constructed in terraces up the side of a great peak. The countryside is said to be full of dark magic, illusion, and elements of chaos. Denzians of Jotunheim are known to be great masons and builders, aided in these endeavors by their tremendous size and strength. Since time immemorial, the Jotnar and the Aesir have been unfriendly rivals, fighting numerous skirmishes with occasional flare-ups of all-out war. Asgard has long kept the giants out of Midgard, but not necessarily due to a godly love for humans. The truth is, the gods don't want the giants, who dislike the gods, to be a bad influence on humans. Of course, even though Jotunheim and Asgard are often at odds in Norse mythology, we see a lot of intermingling of the races. A significant number of gods have Jotun blood in their ancestry, and vice versa. Thor is the son of Odin, and the giantess Jord, for example. Odin himself is a descendant of Ymir, the first giant. Of course, that didn't stop Odin from slaughtering his ancestor. To escape Odin's wrath, the other giants rode the cascading waves of Ymir's blood until they washed ashore in a new world, Jotunheim. There's a little thing right here that shows an artistic depiction of Angrboda's lair set into the flesh of a massive ironwood tree. Let's see these. Angrboda, mother of monsters. This skilled Jotun necromancer is said to conjure fear and illusion from her lair in Jotunheim's ironwood. In Norse, her name translates as grief-bringer, or she who bodes sorrow. What were her parents thinking? In Norse lore, the giantess becomes the consort of Loki, and their unholy union produces the enormous wolf Fenrir, a creature supposedly destined to kill Odin at Ragnarok. Her other children include Hel, daunting ruler of the dead in Helheim, and Jormungandr, the massive serpent draped across Midgard. What a brood! No wonder the Vikings call her Mother of Monsters. Thrym, the Too Cunning. The story of this one-time king of the Jotun people is a favorite with Norse storytellers. Thrym, as his nickname suggests, was a clever ruler, but alas, he met his match in the craftiest king of all. One day, during a visit to Midgard, Thrym found Thor sleeping in a glade. The Jotun lord quietly slid Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, from its sling, and promptly snuck back to Jotunheim with the pilfered prize. Instead of stashing the lethal weapon, often referred to as Giant Slayer, in a safe place, Thrym offered to deliver Mjolnir back to Asgard in exchange for Freya's hand in marriage. Sly Odin, master of the art of subterfuge, agreed to the terms, but the Aesir king disguised Thor in Freya's veiled bridal circlet and sent the wedding entourage to Jotunheim. When it arrived at Thrym's palace, Thor leapt out, grabbed his hammer, and slaughtered the entire court. While Vikings certainly appreciate a shrewd ploy, they tend to favor direct and forceful action at the decisive moment. Hermithur the Builder. This tale of a giant who outsmarted himself illustrates how Vikings see the capricious nature of power in the cosmos. Norse lore suggests that while Aesir gods are non-peril warriors, their construction skills are mediocre at best. So when Odin, increasingly paranoid about Ragnarok prophecies, howling fire giants storming the Rainbow Bridge, etc., began to survey Asgard's security features, the Ponderant found his city walls deplorably subpar. As if by magic, a traveling mason arrived at Odin's court with an offer. He would build impregnable fortifications around Asgard in exchange for Freya's hand in marriage. The Aesir did not realize that this mason was the wily giant Hermithur in the guise of an ordinary mortal. Does this offer sound familiar? It seems that Norse lore spinners enjoyed dangling Freya's hand in marriage as part of sly negotiations. The ever-crafty Odin accepted the deal, but added a caveat. The builder had to finish the job in one season, and he could not hire anybody to help. If he didn't meet the deadline, his payment was forfeit. Hermithur agreed, but asked if he could use his horse for labor. Odin said yes, and the project began. It turned out that this horse, a stallion named Svadilfari, was stronger than 20 gods and could haul great stones with ease. With Svadilfari's help, the Jotun stonemason finished the fortification before the deadline, but the rather foolishly revealed himself to be a giant from Jotunheim. While just as in our previous tale of Thrym, Odin relied on the brute savagery of his son Thor to salvage the situation. At his father's behest, Thor hammered Hermithur's skull into shards and pulp, and that was that. Apparently, hiding one's true nature is a capital offense, even if you complete your end of the bargain. Muspelheim, realm of the fire giants. Right over here. This surreal realm of flame, smoke, and brimstone is said to be the primordial source of all fire and light itself, the origin of sun and stars, and all that is bright and burning. Muspelheim is also home to the fire giants and their dead leader Surtur. This legion of terrifying warriors, called Muspels, are said to have reddish skin and wield flame and blistering embers as weapons. Like their bluish frosty cousins the Jotnar, the Muspels are direct descendants of the primal giants who emerged from Yngvingap. Surtur. In Viking lore, no sources I've found indicate any direct encounter with the Lord of Muspelheim or his legendary flaming sword, said to be more dazzling than the sun. Fated to lead his tribe of fire giants into a cataclysmic battle with the gods of Ragnarok, Surtur has spent countless eons in his ember-seared lair, lurking and waiting for his destiny to unfold. Svartalheim, realm of the dwarves. Realm of the dwarven race, Svartalheim, is depicted in Viking tales as a landscape of mineral-rich surrounding wild forests and raging rivers. Dwarves appear in the lore as hardy miners and builders, as well as eminently skilled craftsmen. They extract the realm's abundant natural resources to erect mountaintop citadels and frame vast underground halls. Dwarves are also known for their exquisite weaponry and artifacts. One notable example, Mjolnir, Thor's brutal and all-powerful hammer, is said to have been crafted in Svartalheim by the dwarven blacksmith brothers Sindri and Broker. Ivaldi's sons. Ivaldi is a legendary dwarf craftsman and smith who owed Odin a great debt after the god saved his life. Ivaldi's skill at the forge fire was unmatched, and he is perhaps best known for fashioning Gleipnir, an unbreakable golden rope. Odin used Gleipnir to bind the great wolf Fenrir. In the lore, Ivaldi's sons eventually surpass him in talent and production, famously crafting some of the most renowned artifacts in Norse mythology. One is Odin's legendary Gungnir, the spear that never misses its target. Another is Skildbladr, the Vanir god Freyr's longship, considered the greatest seafaring vessel ever built. This, I imagine, is Asgard, as you can see. It might even be Svartalheim, but I think it's Asgard. We'll see. Helheim, realm of the dead. Helheim is the Norse afterlife destination for people who die of illness, accident, or old age. In other words, if your passing is merely ordinary, i.e., not a glorious death in battle, you are shuttled here instead of escorted by Valkyries to Valhalla's banquet hall. Governed by the imposing goddess Hel, this realm is not the ghastly pit of damnation one sees depicted in Christianity's concept of hell, but the lore suggests it's not exactly a pleasant place either. Detailed descriptions are hard to come by, but the few passages I've read suggest a cold, dim, dreary world full of mundane activity. Hel. The daughter of Loki and Angrboda is widely described in Viking lore as monstrous, and yet her role as Queen of Helheim doesn't appear to be particularly punitive. In fact, some lore suggests that her primary role is to greet the dead. Legend places Hel's palace hall just inside the massive gate at the realm's lone entrance. Garm. Ingress to Helheim is via a dark cave guarded by this massive, vicious hound, said to be befouled by blood. Legend says Garm is destined to battle the Aesir god Tyr at Ragnarok, with each simultaneously causing the other's demise. Beyond Garm's cave, the river Gjoll, a name that translates to howl, flows from a black spring and surrounds Helheim with impassable waters. Modgud. Legend points that only one bridge spans the treacherous waters encircling Helheim. Called Djarbru, it leads to Helheim's entrance, Helgate. There, the mighty giantress Modgud stands as sentry to make sure only those who belong may cross. Sources suggest that Modgud is essentially invincible. Once dark souls enter Helheim, she makes sure that none escape, not even gods. Niflheim, realm of frozen mist. I've read and heard much conflicting Viking lore about the composition and placement of the realms among Yggdrasil's lower roots. But one thing seems consistently clear. Niflheim makes Helheim's bleakness seem like a tropical paradise in comparison. In Norse mythology, this primordial wasteland of ice and frozen mist was one of the first two realms, along with fiery Muspelheim, to emerge from the great void of Ginnungagap. The ensuing clash of fire and ice created an explosion of life stream that became Ymir, the first being and source of all things in creation. Nidhogg. As mentioned earlier, Niflheim is the afterlife destination for truly terrible people. Legend also speaks of a great slithering snake called Nidhogg, caught gnawing at Yggdrasil's roots and banished to Niflheim. As a result, the murderers, rapists, traitors, thieves, oathbreakers, and other dishonored dead sent to Niflheim suffer in eternal agony as Nidhogg feasts on their still sensate corpses. Midgard, realm of mortal humans. Vikings call the earth as we know it Midgard. This is the realm bequeathed to the race of humans. The lore places it at the midpoint of the great world tree, Yggdrasil, hence its name, which means Middle Earth. The Norse tale seems to suggest that Midgard is exponentially bigger than any of the other realms. It is seen as the breadbasket of the cosmos, with fertile soil, abundant game, and, for Vikings in particular, a vast bounty of fish in its waters. I'm particularly fascinated by the myth of Jormungandr, the giant world serpent wrapped around Midgard. It is said this colossal creature will rise on Ragnarok, waking from eons of slumber, to spew deadly poisons across the land and sea. The lashing of his massive serpentine tail will heave the oceans ashore in mountainous waves, inundating the land as he lends his efforts to Midgard's destruction. I certainly hope I'm not around to witness such things. And folks, that has been Chapter 2 of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Journey to the North, Logs and Files of a Hidden One. Join us next time as we go into Chapter 3, The Viking Settlement. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye.